and I'm staying on my tippy toes the whole time for it. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, is this very good for your height already? All right, I'll leave it. Thank you. Okay, I can't do it. Thank you everyone for coming. Really excited to see you all here. How many of you, it's your first time at Coffee and Design? Awesome, so like 30-40% of you. Well, welcome. A little bit about Coffee and Design. We launched in January of last year, so you can see all our awesome organizers wearing limited insurance. So if you have any questions about like how to get involved or more about it, feel free to see one of us. We do an event on the last Friday of every single month. It gets a little wonky kind of around Thanksgiving and Christmas, so we do like the third Friday. But yeah, across all pieces of design, so industrial. Date with all kc.coffeedesign.org. And then you can follow us on all the socials with KC Coffee Design as well. And so we're also live streaming. So if any of your friends are here that couldn't make it, you can go ahead and retweet our tweet that has the link for our live streaming. But for the most part, I just want, housekeeping. Sponsors, we want to thank all our sponsors that help make this happen. So Crema Lab and Sprint Accelerator help bring this thing together, kind of our annual sponsors. And then, of course, a big thank you to Roastery for providing delicious warm coffee. And then to Counterpoint for letting us be in their awesome space. I don't know if you guys have been here before, but it just kind of opened up this year, and so it's really cool to be here. You need to go to the restroom. It's directly right behind this, so just kind of around that hallway. And then trashes are there and there. Kansas City for this. And so kind of just started the cold tweet to Mike, and I said, hey, you want to come to Kansas City? And he said yes. So we're super thrilled. Has anybody ever heard of sketchnoting before? I assume, but okay, cool. So it's pretty new to most of you. So pretty excited to learn about this. And then we'll have a workshop tomorrow, which we'll talk a little bit more about after the talk. But if you guys can just give me or help me in warmly welcoming Mike. Mike Rohde, he's from Milwaukee, so we flew him out here. He's illustrated Rework, $100 Startup, and Remote. And so he's going to kind of teach us a little bit, or talk to us a little bit about Sketchnotes. So I'm going to stop rambling and just clap for him.
So to start things off right, shout out to the Kansas City stuff I see. I greet you as an emissary from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and another classic NFL organization. We respect you. I think we had the first Super Bowl, so that counts as a lot, right? All right, so I'm from Milwaukee, and I'm going to be presenting from my iPad. So this talk is sort of this accumulation of observations and learnings that I've had over the years of sort of getting this sketchnoting thing going. It sort of started as an accident, and we'll get into that a little bit. And I wanted to kind of capture them because I think it's important to reflect and look back on what you've done and see how it's impacted your life. And it's really kind of amazing where this has taken me. I couldn't have imagined being here speaking to you in Kansas City, talking about this 7-8 years ago, because I was just sort of stumbling around. So it's kind of fun to look back. So let's get started. So first of all, you have to know that notes were kind of a burden for me when I started this whole journey. I was kind of a fanatical note taker. I don't know if there's any of you out there that are like me. I used these giant notebooks. I think they were 11 by 14. They had lined paper. I used a pencil because I was worried that if I made a mistake, I could go back later and erase it and fix it. So I was really, really OCD about note taking. I was a very good note taker, but what the problem on the other side was, it was incredibly frustrating for me. I would get to the end of note taking and I was like mentally tired because I was processing all this information. The biggest problem was I was always worried that I was missing something. And so the harder I tried to capture everything, the more stressful it got. And it got to a point where I said, I can't take notes like this anymore. I have to do something else. So professionally, I'm a designer. Designers, as you know, we always work in constraints and limitations. Sometimes they're forced upon us, most of the time, but myself. So what I did is I simplified a lot. So I went from a big 11 by 14 book to a pocket-sized moleskin that I'd bought a few months before and had no clue what to use it for because it was this beautiful book and I was afraid to write in it. I thought I got to use this thing for something. The other thing that I did was I switched to a pen. This was a really important part too, because with a pencil, you have this sort of out. You think you can always go back and erase mistakes, and you feel like you've got this option. With a pen, you have no options. Once that ink and I think the combination of the small size, which meant that I could not take notes of everything, and the ink combined together to sort of force me in this place where I had to be deliberate. And being deliberate also led me to this place of looking for the important ideas in the moment and analyzing what I was hearing and putting it through the lens of what in this talk or this workshop or this whatever can I apply in my life and use tomorrow? Like if I can't apply it, then why am I recording it? So this moved me in this space of looking for big ideas or resonant ideas that were meaningful. And with the extra time that I had, because I wasn't recording everything, I could explore lettering that I love to do. I've always loved lettering and drawing ideas that pop in my head. It gave me the freedom to start embellishing the notes and the ideas that I was capturing. So it sort of moved me into a different mental place. And I think that was really important for me. So the first thing I did was I tried out this idea. I thought it was kind of crazy. I was worried that maybe I would run out of pages or my hand would get tired or something. So I went to a UX conference in Chicago and I tried it out, and I had a blast. I had a lot of fun doing sketchnoting. So this is a picture of the early sketchnotes that I did, using like a drawing of the person who was speaking and sort of experimenting with this idea and fleshing it out. And I had such a fun time that I couldn't wait to do the next one. So the interesting observation that I noticed about doing sketchnotes were that they were a lot of fun to do. So I think it's really important that if you don't love what you're doing, you're probably not going to keep doing it, right? So it was really important that I enjoyed this process. The process of understanding in the moment and analyzing in the moment was really important. But also the drawing and the ability to express myself in a way that was different than just writing text endlessly on the page was very important too. So I think that's a great lesson to learn, that if you enjoy it, you're more likely to continue doing it. If you don't enjoy it, eventually you're just going to run out of energy. So what was interesting was I put the sketchnotes up on Flickr, which at the time was sort of the hot social media in 2007. And what was really fascinating was the speakers would go and see the sketchnotes and they would leave comments. But what was even more interesting was people that hadn't been at the event were leaving comments that they were helpful to them. Now, I really hadn't intended it for people that were not at the event, because some of the things I wrote were in context to what I was thinking or feeling. But I found that interesting, that it could even transcend the moment and maybe extend out to other people, that they could draw meaning from these notes that I was taking. So I kept on going. I went to the SEED conference. This is a conference that was put on for a couple of years by 37 Signals and Kudal Partners and Carlos Segura together. So I just sort of went because I was really interested in the conference, and I sketchnoted it. And I put it up on Flickr like I normally did. And I think Kudal Partners or 37 Signals, they found it first and ended up on 37 Signals blog, which was a big deal because 37 Signals at the time, even then, had a really big reach. So suddenly I had this platform that was promoting this idea of sketchnoting. And I think the lesson that I learned from that was that sketchnotes resonate with people for some reason. It's something to do with the handwritten nature of the notes, and I think the simplicity. Like, if you can get through a talk in like 3 pages or 4 pages, it makes it easy to digest it and take away ideas. So the intention that I had for myself to make it digestible and understandable and actionable is actually helpful for other people too. So I just kept going. I had a lot of fun exploring different ways of doing sketchnoting. So I went to South by Southwest, and I just sort of played around. At this event, I started exploring this idea, what about capturing the things outside of the event? So of course I'm going to capture some of the talks I'm at, but what about, what is it like to be at the event? So I explored some of those ideas, more of the experience around the actual talks. And then the seed guys called me back and said, hey, we really like your sketchnotes. Would you come and be our official sketchnoter at our event? So I said, yeah, sure. The interesting anecdote about these sketchnotes is this is the one moleskin that the bindings in the middle sort of blew up on me, and I had pages like flying out while I was trying to draw them and balancing on my knee. And but it worked out. I was able to make it happen, and they were really happy with what I did. And then that led to South by Southwest started taking notice because my stuff was popping up all over the web. One of the interesting tidbits about what I was posting on Flickr, I was at the time really into Creative Commons. If you know what that is, it's sort of like copyright with some provisions for sharing. And it provides someone the option to post it in their blog or something without asking me directly. It's already got that stuff built in. The permissions for sharing are built into it. And I think that was really important for the sketchnotes to start spreading. And South by Southwest saw that and reached out and said, hey, we see that you're doing these sketchnotes. Would you like to sketchnote as an official sketchnoter? So it started building a little bit more. So I ended up, I think, doing would you be interested in designing the bag for us? We need it in a week, and but you have 13 colors. So I think I managed to use all 13 colors, and I did deliver it in a week. And so it was a really great year because I was sketchnoting and posting, and then everybody had a bag that I designed. That led to an iPhone app after the event. Someone from Michigan reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in taking your sketchnotes and turning them into an app? At the time, the App Store was pretty new, and they were exploring this idea of putting books in simplified form into an app. So they took the sketchnotes and we turned it into an app, which I have a copy. It doesn't exist now, but it has all the sketchnotes in a little app, like with little cards. And eventually that led to Jason Fried reaching out and saying, hey, we really like what you're doing. We think you understand our company. Would you be willing to illustrate our book rework? I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So I ended up doing the book rework with them, and it was a lot of fun. It was very difficult, but it gave me opportunities. So the thing that I then led to was I had a friend in Portland when I went to visit, and he said, Mike, you really got to take these ideas of sketchnoting and turn it into a book, because there's other people out there that I think could benefit from these ideas. So like after dinner, he emailed his editorial person and set it up with me to talk with them. And they really liked the idea, and we ended up doing a contract and doing the first book, the Sketchnote Handbook. It sold really well. It sold so well, in fact, that there was a German publisher that was really fascinated, and they converted it to German with me. They worked with me to generate this. So it's actually really popular in Germany now. And then the Russians wanted to do a version. So now I have to mention, if you can get a hold of the Russian copy, it's kind of crazy. Like, they converted everything. Like, they went through all the sketch notes, they tore out all the text that people had written, and there's some Russian guy there like writing everything in Russian exactly in the same style as the original sketch note. It's kind of crazy. And then that led to the Czech Republic wanted to do a version as well. And they, like the Russians, they replaced everything with Czech lettering. I was there earlier this spring and had a chance to see the book and sign a bunch of books. It was really fun to see, to make this connection. And then the Chinese reached out and said, we're interested in doing a version 2. The funny story there is that I think the publisher was a little worried about printing the quantity that they had agreed to. So they had reservations, and I guess the first week they sold a quarter of the stock that they'd printed. So it was really popular in China too, which is kind of cool. in and build your icon library. And then the Germans wanted a version of that too, so that was kind of fun to see. And then I started leading workshops. So I started going around the country and setting up public workshops, like we're going to do one tomorrow here. Also did some private workshops for companies. So that's been really rewarding and fun to be able to interact with people directly and give them advice and see what they're doing and encourage them. I think a lot of this in-person stuff is encouragement that you can do it. So the long story that you had there in the middle relates to this idea that one thing leads to another. Like for me, I tend to want to jump to the end, like I want to have the Chinese version, but it doesn't work that way. You know, you have to start with the first thing, and then over time, things build up. And I think what I've learned through this whole process is that if you play the long game, it's a lot more valuable because you have sort of the sketchnoting, and it's taken a while to get here, to get to Kansas City and speak to you and have books in other languages. And I kind of wouldn't trade, like if I could have it immediately, it actually would feel like less fulfilling, right? Because I had that experience. It's kind of an adventure, you know, to be able to as rivals. I don't know why I thought that way. I started seeing other people doing sketchnoting. This was early in the process. And some of the people I knew, but a lot of the people I didn't know who they were. And it was a little bit concerning. You know, I looked inside myself and I was worried, you know, this tendency that some of us have, like I have, is to worry that the thing that I built is now, oh, now it's gonna, that's the end of it. I'm just gonna be forgotten. I'll just be one guy that does it. So I had this choice. Would I sort of try to hold it closely and make sketchnoting my thing and copyright it and like chase after people to stop using the word? Or would I be open and share it with the world? When I really thought down in the deep center of my heart what this really meant, it all started with a burden, right? It was a problem for me to take notes, and I found kind of a solution that worked for me. So why in the world would I ever prevent somebody from doing that? That just doesn't sync with the way I am. So it made sense for me that considering that I could have other people maybe break free of the notes that they're forced to take, or they just don't know how to get out of it, that there's another option was really exciting. And so I made the decision that us was more important than me, and decided to become more of a leader in the space and to encourage whenever I could people doing sketchnoting, that it was more important that the idea be maintained and exist after I'm gone, because eventually I'm going to be gone. So if I want this idea to last, I really have to invest in it as a community, and started focusing in that direction. And what's interesting is that led me to another step, creating a thing called Sketchnote Army, which I started in 2009 just on a whim. I just felt like I was promoting my stuff all the time, and as a Midwesterner, that's can sometimes be painful. Like you just want to sort of step in the background a little bit, and I felt like there were a lot of people doing really interesting work, but they weren't being known. There was not really any place to go find sketchnotes. It was sort of find them here. Sometimes they're on Twitter, sometimes they're on Flickr, maybe they're on Tumblr. And I felt like there could be an interesting place to start sharing them and promoting other people. I look to one of my heroes is Jeffrey Zeldman. I love the way he finds other people this is his work. This sort of fits him, right? It's sort of an expression of his personality. And this is my friend Jess. She's not an artist at all. She's actually a librarian in Maine, but was really fascinated with this idea of capturing concepts. And so this is actually a sketch note of a book that she was reading, and she wanted to capture the ideas visually. And she says that it really helps her focus on what's important in the book and really focus on the things that she's thinking as she's reading through it. This is Jaron Lamson. He's down in Austin. He's got a really unique style. So when you see his stuff, you know it's his. His style is probably closest to mine, but it's from India. He's not an artist at all. He's actually a developer, and he was starting to understand how to develop for Android. And he used this sketchnoting technique to capture his thinking around what he was learning. So it was really fascinating to see him using just a pen and a highlighter marker, but yet be able to express himself visually. And again, he said as a developer, it helps him think differently. It helps him sort of see his thinking by stepping outside of himself. So it's pretty valuable. This is my friend Amanda. She's from the UK. Her style is unique. Again, it's a little bit like Eva Lotta, but she's got her own style as well. I love some of the details that she shows and the color combinations that she uses. I think these, again, are highlighter markers. So, there's not really high-tech tools necessary to do this work. But you can use anything that's at hand. This is a really interesting work. So my friend in DC, she does this work, but she doesn't actually fill it out. She does all the, you see it can't be anybody else's. So again, you can see the personality of Carolyn coming through in these sketch notes. This is my friend Mauro. He's an Italian. He was really fascinated by the idea, and he's been pushing it in directions for visual thinking and sort of mapping out what he does in IT. So he's an IT guy. He's not an artist at all either, but he loves doing this. He's a good cook, so he captures all his recipes as sketch notes. So they're actually visually laid out on the page. My friend Creighton, he challenged himself for South by Southwest one year to use an old iPad 1 to see how far he could push it. So he had an iPad 1 and a stylus, and he went to South by Southwest and approached sketchnoting in a different way. So it's really fun to see what he came up with. Sort of this really simple single page, not lots of detail, but lots of pages. His style, again, is very unique to Creighton. This is my friend Shri. He's a guy I work with. He's a back-end developer, and he was learning about front-end stuff. So, and he was playing around with this idea on mouse up and on mouse down, and sort of drawing mice and having fun with it. He's definitely not an artist, but he said it really, again, helps him think through these concepts, and it gives him an expression and a way to capture the ideas that are different than just writing. So I love to experiment. I'm going to show you some samples of some experimental stuff and some directions that sketchnoting is going. So this is from South by Southwest a couple of years ago, with a variety of people talking about RFPs and how they deal with them. So have a little bit of fun. I always thought that chart kind of looked like Pac-Man a little bit. So this I actually did last week. My wife and I were in New York for a private workshop, and one of the things I've been experimenting with is sketchnoting food. So the food that I have is really important, and I like to remember those experiences. And what I find is when I do this, when I capture the evening enjoying food, that I really remember it later. So when I look at this, I can imagine this Rin Thai place. It was on 23rd Street in Chelsea. And I remember the woman that served us the food. I remember the discussion that we were talking about, my wife and I, and it provides lots of detail and reference. This is an interesting thing for all the coffee lovers. So we have a coffee roaster in Milwaukee called Stone Creek, and they do something with training. So they train people on how to make espresso. And one of the things they do is coffee cupping. This is the approach that their buyers use when they go to South America and look at beans. You put 5 cups out and with beans in them and hot water, and then you pour the boiling water in and you mix them with a spoon, and then you slurp them, and you you taste the different flavors. And I wanted to capture this process. So I sat down with my notebook and just went through the process and captured the fascinating tidbits about coffee cupping. And it's just a way of, capturing this experience. This is a painful moment for me. This is when Seattle came back with 5 minutes left and beat us. You can see my heart is broken on the right here. So this is actually, honestly, this is really therapeutic to do this, to sort of capture each event. You can see all the different things that were going on and my questioning of why did you do that? And you can see it sort of goes off the rails near the end. But as painful as it was, I think it was really good for me to do this. It helped me to sort of see, when I went back, I could see the game in a different perspective. And it was kind of fun to do it. So this is another way that you could capture an experience and use it in a different way. So I've got this new Apple Watch my company got for me because we're UX designers. We need to be aware of interfaces. So I wanted to try and capture what was the experience of having an Apple Watch in a different way than just writing a typical review. So I started using I have a Baron Fig notebook, and I started capturing some of my observations. I haven't done it for a while. I've sort of been living with the watch for a little while, but I'm going to come back in and write some of the other observations that I'm seeing. But this is sort of a sample page where I sort of captured the idea of the health and fitness features, as well as sort of this idea that the progression of moving from these giant computers in rooms, and now we've got probably more powerful thing on my wrist. It's this interesting concept, and it was a way of expressing what I was thinking that I can go back and look at it or share it with other people. So my wife and I went to Prague, as I mentioned earlier, this spring, and we had a lot of fun. So I've been experimenting with travel sketchnotes. This is a map of the city that I was playing with, and then I added some orange ink to it just to try and have fun with it. You should know that if you're a beer drinker, Prague is really good beer, and it's like $2 for a liter. And delicious food. It's very reasonable. People are really friendly. So when I see this, I remember all the places that we went together when we were there. So again, this travel sketch note provides sort of a memory. It's a memory palace in some senses. So I can tell you that my 5-year-old daughter does sketchnoting. She's pretty awesome. That's one of her sketch notes. Summertime. Butterflies, flowers. So you can learn sketchnoting too, and we're going to do that tomorrow. It's a lot of fun. We're going to explore some different ways of thinking, and we're going to try a lot of different techniques together. So, if you're interested, we're having tacos and coffee and breakfast, and you get a sketch kit, and we're going to hang out. So if you're interested in doing sketchnoting and learning a little bit more about it, you can come and check it out. And I think Kelly's got a code up for Friday. It gets you $15 off. So if you're kind of fascinated about this idea of sketchnoting and whether you can do it or not, I think everybody can do it. And I'd like to be able to encourage you and bring you along in that process. So with that, I'm open to questions. Please ask some questions, and I'd like to answer whatever you've got.
How does your wife feel about the sketching during dinner?
Sketching during what?
Dinner.
She actually, so the trick is I don't do it during dinner. I actually take pictures, and then I do it after. That moment as well. So she kind of enjoys it. But I make sure to eat the food first and draw it later. Very, very important key. Yes?
Have you been able to transition or make the jump from pen and paper to iPad, stylus, paper, or anything like that?
I'm a little bit old school, so I still always fall back on paper and pen. There's some immediacy. I like the idea that I'm not dependent on batteries and other things, but I've been experimenting more with, I love the Paper's pencil, which is a Bluetooth-enabled stylus that gives sort of some control. Like if you press harder, it gets thicker or thinner, whatever. And I've actually been exploring all the color screens you've seen in here were done in paper. So I'm starting to experiment with that. When I do the workshop, I use an app called Penultimate, which was purchased by Evernote. And I like it because it's really flexible and it lets me build presentations by hand. Sort of changes the dynamic a little bit. It's a little bit less polished. So there's some ways I like it. I've tried it in talks before. I think with because paper tends to give me more detail, like I can get more detail on a page. I'm initially frustrated by the limitations of the iPad because I don't want to zoom in and out so much. I just want it to be immediate. But I think what I'm finding is the solution on an iPad is more pages and fewer things on the page. So that's been sort of my direction. But I think there's a lot more apps out there that I haven't explored that I'm going to take a look at. And a lot of them support the pencil now. It's a very popular tool. So they're integrating support with the pencil so you can use the same tool for all these apps. So I like it for different reasons, but I need to focus a little bit more on trying it out. I think my thing blew up. Yes?
How many different notebooks do you have with you right now?
Well, I have 2 here. I've got a logbook in my bag. I can show you guys later if you want to hang out and take a look at some sketch notes. I think that's it. I only have 3. Yeah. Yes? That's an interesting and a good question. One of the things that I do is I do something called caching and staking. So caching is this idea that you keep some of the idea in your memory while you're writing something else. And it's definitely a learned process. At first, it can be challenging because you've got lots of stuff coming in, but it can be learned. The other trick that I use that's helpful is called staking. And what I do there is I put a little bit of what someone's saying, and if they jump to another concept, I sort of estimate like about that much space. I'll leave space, and I'll jump down and I'll start capturing the next point. And if they keep doing it, I just keep doing the same thing. I'll just leave space. But then the key is you got to come right back after the event and fill that in, because if you wait, then it's going to all float away. So it's really important that if you do that staking, that I'll come back in and I'll fill in the details right away. Or if they're rambling or they're, it's something I'm not capturing, then I'll go back and fill that in as soon as I can. So there are some techniques that help with that. The other thing I can do is you can have like a little cheat sheet where you can write stuff down while you're sketching and sort of transfer it over. Some friends like to use pencil first, and then they go back over it in ink. The problem with that is you're doing it twice, but there's some advantages to it as well. So there's a bunch of different techniques that you can use. Yes?
Any speakers in mind that was the most difficult?
Certain speakers?
Yeah, like the most difficult one to try and
Ramblers. People that tell you that they have 3 points and then they have 2 or 5 or 7, or that's always interesting. I guess the advantage of ramblers is it gives me a lot more time to draw the concepts, because usually they focus on one idea and then I can sort of expand on it. So I think what's really interesting about sketchnoting is it's very much about listening and processing. Like there's sort of tends to be an emphasis on the drawing part of it, and I think that's like the lowest part of it in a lot of ways. Like you don't have to be a great artist to do sketchnoting. You just have to be able to communicate your ideas. A lot more emphasis is on, am I willing to try this? So my attitude, and then you're listening. It really sharpens your listening skills a lot. And then sort of picking out the important points, which at first can be more challenging. But as you start listening and sketchnoting speakers, you can really find the ones that get off track easily. You spot it immediately, and you can tell a really good speaker from all the different levels. So you can appreciate speaking a lot more when you do this technique. At least that's what's worked for me. Yes?
What kind of inspiration do you use for organization? For example, like UI, or like you have certain graphic elements to emphasize the hierarchy throughout the page. So I was wondering where you pull inspiration from.
That's a good question. I steal icons from interfaces all the time. There's like the Noun Project is a great resource if you want to get ideas for icons. So that can be helpful. From a layout perspective, I'm always trying to pushing myself to try different things. I tend to do a linear flow, so I do left page, right page, kind of like a book. Other people experiment with more of a mind map approach, where maybe you've got a concept in the middle, and then you've got these ideas that float around it. So I mean, there's different layouts that you can try. If you're on an iPad and you have endless paper, you can just keep going down until you're done. So I mean, there's different directions to take. And I think I look at other people's work to get inspired. Like, oh, that's really interesting that they did this. Then I'll steal that idea, or I'll look to maybe magazine layout. Like maybe there's a big image on the left, and then there's text So inspiration can kind of be almost anywhere. Thanks. I saw a question here. That's a good question as well. So the way I look at Sketchnotes is there's sort of a spectrum. So on the one end, there's sort of images, and the other end, there's text. And sketchnoting sort of slides based on what the context is. So in a meeting where you have, say it's a board meeting, and you have to capture high detailed information and very specific information, you might have a lot more text. It might be more on this side, right? But what you can do is use little icons to help identify things like concepts that are interesting, or problems that you see coming, or tasks that you are assigning for yourself or your team. And you can sort of build those into the notes that are more text-based. But then when you go to, like, if you're going to go see a speaker, then maybe that slide's way over here where it's more conceptual. And then you can sort of move it wherever you need to based on what you're capturing. So maybe like travel sketch notes, like I showed, or food is somewhere in the middle, right? It's maybe a little more toward the visual side with notes, and you just sort of pick what you think is right. And sometimes you get it wrong, and next time you do it differently. The thing I like about sketchnoting is there's not really a wrong way to do it. It's sort of open to interpretation. It's really personal. And you can sort of adapt it to what you need. What I love most is seeing people using it in really interesting ways. As an example, there's a guy, Rob DeMeo, who's a scientist, and he wanted to try and sketchnote science lectures. He found it was really complicated and difficult because some of the detail they go into is really technical. So what he found was he just had to do a lot more research. So he would research the speaker, he would research the topic, and he would come with knowledge to the talk before he got there. So when he got there, he wasn't like struggling with the concepts. He was actually, had understood them, and he could represent them in a different way. Or he could go back to his notes afterwards and fill in the space that, okay, I know that concept, let's leave about this much space, and then I'll come back later and fill it in. So you don't have to do it in the moment. It can be a mix of both. So again, it's super flexible and adaptable to what you need. I think I've gotten better at being able to listen. Like, people think I'm not listening and I'm capturing everything. So to give you another idea, I think it's a kind of a learned skill. There's this whole discipline that I didn't know about when I started this called graphic recording and graphic facilitation. They typically do big boards like whiteboards or big sheets of paper. And they're tasked with listening to the group and capturing what they hear on the board. And a graphic facilitator is even more difficult because they actually run the meeting and do that. So it's a really high requirement. They're professionals. I'm starting to move into that space. So I work with a small development team. We're working on software. And what we do is every Monday we have 1 hour set aside, and I go to a whiteboard and we talk about, okay, what's today's feature? It's some field with a drop down. How's that going to work? And what is the error going to look like? And I'll go through and draw it out on the board as we talk. And then when they have ideas, like, I just give them the marker and say, go draw it. So that everybody's involved, and it's sort of this interactive thing. So I think for like an ideation session, it can be really empowering to give people the marker or the pen or whatever to express themselves. And then they get to say it, and you can understand it because you can see it. I think a lot of times we may think that we believe the same thing about an idea, but your idea is a little bit different than mine. And by exposing it, by drawing it, even if it's a bad drawing, if it's communicated, you can see, oh, that's not what I was thinking at all, right? You can see where the differences are. So I think it's a valuable way of communication can be both verbal and visual together. I don't know. I guess I was crazy. I had been playing with Flickr and putting stuff up there, and I thought it'd be interesting to see what would happen. I think I sort of have an experimental mindset about a lot of this stuff, so sometimes even the failures are more interesting than the successes. Like, I can see, well, that was really interesting. It didn't turn out right, but there's a little kernel of this that I like. I want to try it again, and I'll shift my perspective. So I think a lot of it was this experimental mindset. Just let's see. Like, I was curious about Flickr. I was curious about other people. Like, how far could this reach? I had no clue whether it would actually go anywhere, but it turned out pretty well. Sure.
How would you say the most dramatic change in your process from when you first started it to where it is now?
So go ahead.
Oh, if any.
Oh, definitely. I think there's definitely been improvement. Like my ability to understand and conceptualize is sped up a lot. I think just like everyone, I was afraid to show my work to some degree. Even though I was a designer and I used sketching every day and I showed it to clients, like there was a process of being comfortable with showing my work to clients and having them engage with me. So as a logo designer for a long time, I was working with a lot of remote clients. I would actually sketch out the concepts as I would process through them, and I would just stick that up in Basecamp and number them and go through with the clients and explain in text what it was that I was thinking. And I would even like number 7, oh, that's a terrible idea. We can't use this, and here's why. But I thought the thing about visualizing is you can go down rabbit holes in wrong directions and sort of get them out of your system. I think the challenge sometimes is if you have this idea that you're not sure about and you don't really follow it, you always think, well, what if I had done that? Then it would have been great. But if you put it out and you're like, oh, this is terrible, we can't use that idea, it sort of redirects you even more toward the good idea. So both, bad ideas and good ideas can be helpful in setting direction. And now I'm, standing at a whiteboard every week and all the time going up and talking, and it's the ability to listen and analyze and draw it is really helpful. And I think it's inspiring my team that they can do it too. So they're coming up and also engaging. So I think it's definitely been a process improvement for me, just thinking in different ways.
Chuck? So would you say that synthesizing other people's ideas and kind of simplifying that has helped you with coming up with your own ideas?
I think so. I would say that it's the process is separate from what you're capturing. So it just happened to be that there were a lot of talks around that I could hone this skill with. But what I realized was this actually related to what I learned as a designer, like processing through ideas and learning how to identify, oh, that's really interesting, I should take that in another direction. Like, so the process is the same, it just happened to be applied to talks. And once I realized, like, holy cow, this is like a whole process that could be applied in a much broader scope. Then I started experimenting. What if I use it for travel? What if I take it to the restaurant? What if I, whatever it is, watch a football game? I mean, almost any kind of experience could be captured, and it's really this core principle, right? That's about synthesizing and focusing on what's important now and capturing that so that I can go back to it and refer to it. So I think I sort of, in a way, stumbled onto it. I grew up in church, and what I realized, I used to sketchnote a lot of sermons. And so I think that sort of honed my skill as well, this listening to speakers and identifying rabbit holes, like, preachers go off on rabbit holes all the time. So I think sort of just doing it, that's the thing I tell people, is just doing it is really important. Like, there's no substitute for just grinding through it and doing it, and maybe it's not right. And you just get back up and you do it again, and you keep building that skill. And that skill, I think, is really key for being confident when you go to a whiteboard or drawing with someone. And that's at the heart of it.
I just read an article about how they did a study about kids in school and how everyone's got these tablets now, so they're taking notes on the computer. And they really, they tested against people who were transcribing minutes by hand. So do you have any plans to, like, are you doing this in the schools and stuff like that, so you can bring them back to the handwritten material?
Yes. I read that study as well. It was, they did a study, I think they were college students, and they had to write, I think they did a lecture, a video recorded lecture. One half of the students did typing on a keyboard, and the other did just longhand notes. What they found was immediately after, like the next day or whatever, both of them had pretty equal memory because they just experienced it, right? But a week later, I think, the keyboarders sort of dropped way off, and the handwritten note people maintained. And what they realized was, even if they told them, they did other tests to say, okay, if you're typing notes, don't verbatim take the notes that they're saying. You need to analyze their thoughts or what the thoughts are. People still fall into doing note-taking as, like, just writing what's exactly said. So yeah, so when you handwrite, then you're actually analyzing, because you can't keep up. It's impossible to, unless you're really, really amazing or something. So you tend to fall back on analyzing and capturing. So that's one part of it. What I'm finding, a lot of teachers love sketchnoting. I get all kinds of emails from teachers that love the idea, and what they find is when they present it to their students, because their students like to doodle and draw anyway, it sort of engages them in a new level. Like they get super engaged, they get excited. All the teachers I've talked to that have experimented with this in their classes find it really helpful, and they enjoy it too because they've got this engagement and a way of talking with their students. So there are pockets of it that are starting to build up. I'm sure there's, some student or some teachers that are resistant to it because they think you're just doodling. But I think if the kids are going to doodle anyway, why couldn't we channel that in a positive direction? And if it helps them remember the concept, well, that's awesome. Why wouldn't we do that? So there is definitely a movement in that direction to introduce this into education more and more.
All right, well, thank you so much.
So we have a giveaway. We have a giveaway for someone. If you haven't got your name in the hat, this would be a good time to put your name in the hat.
All right, so couple of things, as Mike mentioned at the end of his talk, and if you haven't caught it through all our socials, but we're doing a full day workshop tomorrow with Mike where he's going to go through actual drawing skills and sketchnoting techniques and kind of learning how to catch those ideas and go through different exercises. So that's going to be tomorrow. It's just going to be at the Sprint Accelerator, just a block over. And so there will be coffee and breakfast, and then tacos for lunch, and then there's a full day workshop with him. That's tomorrow from about 9 to 4. So if you can join us for that, that would be awesome. We'll actually do any registrations that you want to do here too. And again, with code Friday for $15 off. So see anyone with one of these shirts if you want to register here, or of course you can do it afterwards too. But we're going to give away one ticket for that too, as well as for this book.
Awesome.
So we'll start with this book. So I'll let you do the discount for like 35% too, if you want to just order that. And then for the big workshop ticket, you got one?
Yep. Stephen Carlson.
Oh.
All right, Stephen.
I'll register you afterwards.
Sorry, you don't.
Do you want this thing? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Feel free to get some more water and some juice, hang out for a little bit, and then we'll kind of skedaddle here in the next 15 minutes or so. For our next Coffee and Design next month, September 25th, we're going to be talking kind of brand collaboration around some really big brands here in Kansas City and how they work together to create unique products between the two of them. So that's going to be pretty fun. So we'll be announcing that next week, so keep an eye out for that. And again, I hope to see most of you at the workshop. We can help register anyone this morning as well. So let's just thank Mike once again for joining us.
Stop